Scott, can you confirm you can see this model?
Yes.
Yeah, we see it. It's yeah, it scroll down a little bit because we can't see the top of
You
it.
can't see the top of it. Okay, it's fine. I mean, I could
There
make
we
it, you can see the whole thing that way.
Okay, everybody.
Enough.
This we got the picture. We've got sound. We're cooking with gas here, so Ting, you can take it away, and you and Mike can collaborate on taking us through the model and getting comments and so forth.
Yeah, thank you, Cello. And first, I just want to thank you, Mike, for helping me and create this the process diagram about our IT project governance model. So just a little recap from last time when we met, and I presented the process, a visual way of how I plan for the IT governance model. So from there, we created I should say Mike created this process diagram yesterday. So we want to share with everybody. It's really as a starting point to getting your feedback. And this is really the good timing for us from Clean Water Services and getting your feedback. And hopefully this process also inspires some of the additional conversations on how we better collaborate on technology and project here. So Mike, I'll get started and feel free to jump in as if I miss anything here.
Yeah, and if people have comments or notes, I'll just collect them here. And if we want to make some changes, we can do that on the fly too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's starting from at the bottom is where each department or whoever from the department can submit an IT request, a project request. So this will be on a quarterly basis. Right now it's very ad hoc and everyone can submit the request. And we want this to be more on a regular quarterly basis. And then each program and the department will also assign a coordinator. So they will look through the request and then also sequence and prioritize on a department level, for instance, wastewater operations or regulatory affairs. And then this is so from there we'll formulate the candidate IT project, and then each department will have a list of a prioritized project. And then going up is where the digital solutions program manager, which is myself, and then we'll create this project steering committee to reveal all the project leads from each department or programs. So the committee is something I like to create. Currently, we don't have it. So what I'm thinking about is the management team from my group, as well as the field department representatives. So this would be program managers who have a good understanding about the business value and needs, as well as the domain knowledge. So we'll have 5 or 6 committee members, and I'll reveal this. I'll reveal the list of items. So if there are any questions, clarifications for department, this will go back to the bottom and for department to clarify. But if everything is clear, we'll look into, based on the business need, the impact, the technology, feasibility, as well as the level of effort. So the committee will provide a list of recommendations for next quarter. This is what the IT should invest in. So then this list the recommendation will go to the next level. So which is our executive team, which is called a strategic. Mike, if you can go down, up, yeah, thank you. Which goes to the strategic advisory group. So they will reveal the recommendations and saying whether it's approved. If the project list is approved, and then that goes down to the digital solutions project team. So the project will get implemented. If there is, so that's going down. And then we'll finish from there, we'll finish the quarterly project process. if there are questions or disapproved, and then that goes back to the steering committee for further evaluation or consideration or steps from there. So that's what we have talked about yesterday in the general process of how would the governance model work. I saw Scott have his hand up. Haskins?
I'll just go ahead. So maybe you just want to elaborate a little bit more. So this you just said was a quarterly process. So it could be groups of projects, and would those be integrated with the existing ones that are in the pike, or just new ones to be considered on a quarterly basis?
Yeah.
And then do you have, I think you had criteria that you displayed last time that you're using. And are those going to get represented here as well, like the criteria or for prioritization and that kind of stuff, or approval and disapproval?
I think that will be nice to incorporate that criteria, Scott. So essentially, we're looking at from a business side, is the business feasibility and the impact to the organization, as well as from a technology standpoint, which will be evaluated by Digital Solutions IT Group, is on the tech feasibility, as well as the level of effort, the resource needs there. From another question you have is ongoing projects. So what the plan is, so the Digital Solutions will continue doing a lot of this keeps the lights on foundational type of work, like a patching, maintenance type of work. So those resource capacity is already allocated for, let's say, 30% of the time is already allocated for those foundational items. This sequencing model only applies to the strategic or aspirational type or operational type of things. It's nice to have, and then we'll go through the sequencing model. And if a project takes more than a quarter to finish, we will also just allocate that, maybe it's 6 months or 12 months, and then the remaining capacity will be looked and aligned with the request there.
So Mike's probably taking good notes, but adding something in terms of resourcing these projects and something about schedule are two things you just mentioned, right?
Yeah, this is an interesting discussion. I think one thing that's missing here is the correct timing, as Ting mentioned, sequencing. I'm guessing this creating the project steering committee. I mean, do you do that? It seems to me like you get a list of, you wait for a complete list of projects from the teams, from these departments. And then once you have that, you know, it's your signal to start creating and convening the PSC. Does that make sense? Is that correct?
Yeah. Once
so
we have this
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying, so the schedule would be, you know, let's say around March time, the beginning of March, everyone should start submitting their project list. And then ideally, once we get this into a routine, would be by the end of March, the committee meet and then start to plan for the next quarter's activities.
So there's a kind of queue here that builds up, and then you know, a call to order or something like that. Means convene that PSC. That then, you know, launches everything else. So there's that, and that makes sense, and that there's this feedback loop, right? So when let's assume that one team doesn't have all their scope ready, it's got to go back to the team, and then you wait to get everybody's responses before you then you know, kick off the PSC, or do you just sort of take those when they arrive?
We'll just take those when they arrive.
Okay.
I don't think we can wait for everyone.
Right. I mean, this feedback loop could be, a lot of work, right? If they don't get the formulation correct, then you've got a, cycle here that's eating up a lot of time. So
And
that was,
yeah.
go ahead.
The other thing is this is a more for complex project that it will be ready for planning or sequencing. So a lot of times if a committee have outstanding project questions, I think it reflects it's probably not a finalized or project or things, it's more of ideas. So the ideation is not part of this process. So if a department wants to talk with us on some project, they can do that anytime. And then we can work with them to formulate a project plan or something for the committee to evaluate.
Right. So then, Scott, you mentioned the resource requirement. I guess we were assuming, Ting, in our discussion yesterday, because I saw this in the, Cello finally sent me the mural board example that you did. But it seems to me that considering criteria and sequencing and candidate projects, this is where the resource discussion would occur. Does that make sense? Like when I'm pointing here in the middle. So I think what we've discovered here is that, what goes on inside this considering the criteria for projects is a lot more substantial than what we have here. And there has to be a check before it gets, and this is a question, before it gets resolved. We have to resolve the resource issue before it gets to the strategic advisory group. Is that true?
Yeah, Mike, I think one thing we talked about yesterday realizes that, probably 30% of project will be ready to implement to, actually for the team members to work on. The other part is going to be some additional planning work. So what I envision is going to be, these are the project for implementation. These are the list of project requires further planning and maybe proof of concept. So we'll let the executive team know. So it's still progress, but it's not implementation yet.
Okay, so does the recommendation go to the strategic advisory group that this should be a POC and not a project, and then they're basically approving a POC?
Yeah, okay. Approve the time, the investment that is appropriate for the POC.
So this part could include recommended POCs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are schedules in there too then?
Yeah. Yeah, schedule is a good part as well. Because we will be able to continue to take on new requests. A lot of this requires more than the quarter.
Scott Parker has a question, but are you adjusting other project schedules or costs or resource assignments based on the input of new projects?
I want to I think the committee would recommend, because the committee will include committee member will include the IT manager, who will have a good understanding of the requirement, the level of effort it requires. So we'll have that as part of the recommendation. Is that your question?
No, it's like, what about the existing projects? They're already underway, but you may not have enough. Are you going to just maintain exactly what you have already? Or are you going to adjust the projects or the schedules or the budgets for the existing projects when you consider new ones?
I don't plan to adjust existing project, because for the existing work that if not here, then that means it's a non-discretionary. So it's a patching, it's a upgrade things that you'll have to do, Scott.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so we have each quarter we have a fixed amount that we allocate to the business, to support business.
Scott Parker's had his hand up for a long time.
Thanks, Scott, for your patience here.
No, it's good. I really appreciate it. First of all, I like this model. This is interesting. Couple things that I saw that I just, if you could give me a little more insight into, could you go back to the beginning of the process? And I think this is something that we fight a lot, Ting, is the word that you used, I think, was these are more strategic or enterprise level type.
Aspirational.
Yeah, aspirational. So two things I guess we run into, and I'd be interested in sort of how you formulate what that means in your organization. One is we don't like, we've created checklists and other things that we think sort of get to that, but then you know, it's sort of the power of the organizational, you know, whatever, whoever sort of selling the project kind of overrides that a bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Second thing is actually another one we find a lot is we have too many. We have too many of those. We have versus the resource load that we actually have. And right now, I don't know if you all have seen this, but the demand for our data tools and our creation of new data tools and really at that enterprise or that strategic level is just overwhelming. I mean, I just don't have the resources to do it. So it's sort of that the question I guess I have is like, how do you then, once you kind of get this laid out, filter it the first time? And then it seems to me you have to refilter it kind of over and over again, maybe through this feedback loop or other ways. But I mean, there's going to be, at least for us, there are a number of the projects that are going to meet that criteria right from the jump, right? And then it's going to be which one is the most achievable, however. And I'm just interested in sort of how you foresee handling that.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting, and right now I'm on exactly the same boat as you, Scott. It's overwhelming. So you know, on my team we have hundreds of lists and requests and backlogged already, and right now I'm negotiating with the business department saying we don't have the capacity. Can we do this next month or something? Just trying to kind of fit everyone's needs and schedule. That's what I want so I will be presenting this to our executive team in a couple of weeks, and mainly just for them. Eventually, the decision will be them. So it's not from a digital solutions. I'm making that decisions. And then the committee, and that's why I want to have several departments representative here that hopefully we'll come to an agreement with, you know, this is what we need to do immediately. There are not going to be approved from all that list. So there will be things that we'll do this quarter. This will be the next. Yeah, I think you are right. It will be things that won't get approved will be, you know, reprioritized with the next quarter's list and things.
One, that's actually going to be, this is the only other thing I mentioned is, I mentioned how you land on a quarterly. And let me just tell you why. It sort of goes back to what I just said. I mean, honestly, we could probably do it almost weekly right now. Have a committee that met almost weekly. Now, getting people's schedule and getting time and getting them to pay attention to it, it's just impossible. But I'm just sort of interested in, is that a function of sort of your bandwidth? Or is there something in the quarterly time interval that sort of strategic thinking?
That's a great point. So currently we do it just ad hoc and pretty much like a weekly review of things and stuff. But one of the concerns is that I don't want my team to constantly shifting direction. So, you know, they're working on this and suddenly another request coming in, this urgent request, and then they need to change back, and then they need to pause, and then when they pick up this item again, it's a lot of just the time, the additional time required to just constantly stopping and starting things. So the other thing is the project list, the definition of a project. So the project is this is just a more of a 40 hours or above, I think 20 or 40 hours above. So we're still having that general thought. So my plan is to leave team enough time to work on things, the support request that only takes less than 20 hours or thing. So those are the items we will be managing more on a daily and a weekly basis. This is a strictly more complex project, requires multiple departments. What I see another problem is people have an idea and then, oh, I will put the request, but they are not ready. And another one is this requires, there's a one department have idea, but it requires the coordination and with several departments, and not everyone's on the same page. And that's getting another challenge we all have talked about. So I want to make sure the business is ready when we start implementing that. Because that's another one that we constantly see as the rework and efficiencies. It just got lost because the technology, software engineers get put into the things that you're coordinating more from a business standpoint.
Yeah, the one thing that we sort of do to help with that prioritization, and I mean, it's sort of by accident, but how we evaluate, a part of the evaluations is in relation to core systems, right? So if I want to build a dashboard of some sort, okay, what core systems am I having to engage, right? Those get a little bit more priority, or upgrades to, GIS, or your upgrades to your CIS. Those get more priority relative to, so that's another, sort of just another criteria. And this is, like I said, this is really good to see this, and it's like, God, there's a, there's a lot going on, and it's even just these, like, there's not many steps here, but each step has tons and tons and tons of
definitely, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
So that last comment Scott made there, that's pretty evident listening to the discussion. All of these blocks that we've got, I just showed them as collapsed sub-processes. And you could, the team could choose, maybe I know something about this or this or this, and flesh those out further with more detail.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I see Mike Sweeney here has his hand up.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Ting. It's looking good. So if you, Mike, if you can scroll up to the top for just a sec. So these projects, this is not at a creation point. This is, I guess I need to understand where we are. This is not part of commencing a new approved project. This is to get to approval, correct?
Yes.
Okay. With this, do you envision something like, it'd probably maybe be a different looking process than to do a review of an existing project? So, okay, just set that aside. I think I understand your thought process here. And maybe this is a sub-process. Are you looking at ROI, and are you looking at risk as part of a sub-process here?
Yeah, I would consider that is a part of the both from an individual department level as well as the project committee, steering committee level. From an individual department, so that is another process, requires a sub-process for being more consistent and looking to the criteria is what the steering committee is looking at, and also the risk and the ROI return as well. So Mike, that's a great question. I don't have an answer on that, but I think we need to further expand on the criteria. Probably will getting to is the business impact. I see the risk is a part of a business impact.
Right, and risk, means two things. There's risk inherent to a project, any IT project.
Oh, okay.
But there's also risk of not doing the project.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Yeah.
And ROI is self-explanatory, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Great job, thanks.
Yeah, great question. So one question I have for the team, and looking for your feedback as well. So we have overall 10 plus different programs and departments who's going to submit the request. I don't see that we'll have 10 plus people in this committee who's going to prioritize the project. It will take days. However, what's your suggestions on who would be representing this? I think this could be an interesting discussion to who needs to be on the committee. Just curious from your organizations.
So to
Evaluation committee?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, so I think what you're suggesting or what you're speaking to there are sort of what's the limiting variable that's going to drive the ultimate decision. And what I mean by that is who's going to
Influence maybe.
maybe have the ultimate influence too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you, and again, it's not formalized. So what you're trying to do, I think, is much more sustainable and quite frankly is a best practice versus what we've tried to do, which is more, it's probably just, as you mentioned, ad hoc. But typically speaking, where we find the who ultimately has the final say, unless there is a compelling business need outside of a system that we currently have at our disposal, right? It's almost always the tech team, the data tech team that makes the ultimate decision. And let me tell you why. It's twofold. One is the bandwidth that we have. We just don't have a ton of resources. But the other is the breadth of the implementation typically is misunderstood or not understood anywhere but. And so I'm the asset manager, right? So my job is to be able to line up what's going on with the tech group and what's going on with the business and be able to explain some level of detail. So through sort of our business process or our business case evaluation, we get to that and we make a formal recommendation before we even get to the committee. Does that make sense? We say, hey, we've evaluated this. We've looked at it in the context of the business. We've looked at it in the context of available tools.
Okay.
Here's our recommendation. And then now if you want to battle it out at the committee level, you're arguing at the level of where it should be argued, which is at the business capacity level, if that makes sense.
It's not at the business priority level. Yeah.
Versus at because when you start getting into the technical level, people just, they go on screensaver on their eyes. And I don't, and actually we do the same thing on our capital program as well. So our business case evaluation for our capital program, I don't like, we have a full risk model, we use it, whatever, but really that is to get to the point of decision, not, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not, we don't debate that. We debate it when it gets past that. And
I see. Okay. So you guys have a different layer. I can see that. We don't. That's the reason I'm asking, because what I see the committee members needs to get in the room to talk about whether it's implementing a new CRS system is important versus, we're doing another system upgrade. So those are the business level that we need to get together. Plus the technical.
It's like, I sort of feel like it's like if you've got something that people can react to, which is like a formal recommendation, right? You get a lot more quality in the conversation and probably get a lot faster to the decision versus if you're just like, hey, do you think this is a good idea? Here's our analysis. Do you think this is a good idea? And then it just kind of goes into whatever spot the organization they inhabit. So it's not formalized, but that's essentially how it works.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Scott.
Scott, let me add to what you're saying too. There's two sides of the coin, as you well know. There is, the need to do the project, and that could be driven at the executive level. It could go all the way to outsourcing it, getting it closer to a turnkey, which is scary. But if there's urgency here, there's you find a way to minimize the risk of the do nothing option, if you will. But then there's also the stakeholder side of it. It invariably, a lot of these projects will involve operations or some operating unit within utility. And sometimes, they need to know they got skin in the games. There is quote unquote billable hours there that they're going to have to invest time along with the IT staff.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think that's under emphasized, and that has to be made clear up front that, you know, especially in the interest of IT resources, if you if you're going to do this project, we're going to need somebody or somebody's X amount of time over the next 6 months, you know, whatever it is. And here's the task that we need you guys in this operating unit, and you need to commit to. And
to your
go
point
ahead.
there, to your point, Mike, that's the deal, right? Because then you're making them state up, how important is this to you really, right?
Yeah.
And because of the very thing that you mentioned, there is
Right.
there's no non-cost here. There's going to be a cost to everybody in some form of or fashion here. I totally agree.
Absolutely. It's so easy to tell IT, quote unquote, what to do, and you walk away and you come back 6 months and say, where is it? That's not how this can work.
Yeah, and that's what I want to capture at the bottom, the department level. So when they submit the request, so they need to also plan or think about their resource allocation as well.
Yeah, I go back to it. I know I put it in the artifacts team. That's what we do sort of through our business case evaluation process.
Got
Right?
it.
We
Yeah.
make them state it right up front, and it's not fun. And I say, hey, if you really need this, you're going to fill it out.
Yeah.
It's a way of doing exactly what Mike's saying, which is sort of weeding out what really needs to be done versus.
Yeah. Especially if you are thinking about a project, you know, more than 40 hours. You'll need to do some planning.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but we don't have many projects that are under 40 hours that aren't just like strictly technology. You know, hey, it's or it's we got to rewrite some scripts or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much. Same here.
Cello
Especially
had his hand up for a while.
I just wanted to mention that one of the things that we're doing on other initiatives is that once a high-level diagram like this has been developed, then different utilities can, once they agree that the overall diagram makes sense, they can attack different sub-processes, such, for example, you know, formulate the candidate IT projects, and then maybe break that down, and another utility may, you know, break something, other part of it down. So, for example, on the CIP, the DC Water is just focusing on business case evaluation. So there's an opportunity to collaborate further as this goes into more detail. That's just wanted to mention that.
Great idea.
I love the universality, if that's a word, of the WISE effort.
Yeah. And I think some of the BCE template or ways could even connect it to here. I think that's what, Mike, you are also referring to, that we can connecting between the different groups.
Looks like Scott Haskin has his hand up.
Well, I was wondering, Ting, if there's a list of projects. Is there a formally approved IT plan, let's say, that includes a list of projects and that gets updated, whether it's on a quarterly or annual basis, and the resources are planned for the budget, et cetera? Or what are you envisioning, as an output? Is that the project list? Is the way you're characterizing that, but it's incorporated into the budget, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a year or so just to get the process operationalized, and then having a formal process. And this is going to drive to the resource needs, and both from a capital as well as the funding perspective. And also I'm envisioning, as a project update, it's probably like a monthly. So I want to provide an update to the strategic advisory group or department, the leadership level. This is where we are with your projects. And then this is the, status on that. So we don't have a project manager for PMO type of role in IT or organization. So we're currently trying to also get that in place, but it's, in a way, it's, Scott, yes, I plan to have that project updates to the stakeholders as a follow-up.
So reporting, in other words, some reporting type of function that
Yeah,
could be added to this
Yeah.
chart, you know?
Yeah, Toho has just adopted that approach, Scott and Ting. It's an IT master plan,
Mhm.
much similar to the collection system master plan and the distribution master plan and the water system.
Yep.
But you know, it's much more volatile. In other words, it needs an annual look as opposed to maybe every 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But it runs kind of similarly to that, and you revisit it. And I'll add this: it doesn't maybe belong in a process, but IT's gotten savvy enough to stick Power BI information up there to inform the enterprise how they're doing on the projects. Are they on schedule? Is there a resource thing they've run into and all that? They're communicating that, I think monthly, if I'm not mistaken. And so they've upped their communications as well. And I think that's kind of part of maybe an emerging best practice, at least for us. But I'm glad to hear that you're heading toward that, Ting. We've talked about it offline a couple of times, and working off of a strategic plan or master plan specific to digital solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we do have a IT digital solution strategic plan, identify several large initiatives like a GIS migration or SharePoint Online. So we do have that in place. However, I think there has been a gap and a lack of a connection. I don't want to say pandemic, but I think that certainly plays a role to understand initiatives and understand the business at the business level. So I agree. This is starting at the project level, but hopefully later on we'll get into more also from the top down and plan ahead of time rather than this is still a little bit reactive. I think it's getting better, but it's still yeah.
I see Yvonne and others are on the line. Anybody else want to share, their comments or suggestions?
I'm here and just listening. No comments at the moment.
Yvonne, do you know on top of your head? I think you guys have a committee similar. Do you know how many members are in there? You might have set this.
Yeah, I don't know that we're like a model though. Yeah, it's called this technology working group, and it's basically like all of the. Oh, sorry, there's a background noise. It's all the senior leaders. But we don't have the step that Scott has, the business case evaluation step. We have an IT scorecard, which is the technical side. That's helpful a little bit, but we don't have the business side yet. Although Scott, I shared your work with him.
Nice.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned you, Ting, that our seniors leaders just approve everything, and then we end up with this long queue of stuff that it's a big question mark when work will start on that. And this year, because we had a cybersecurity attack in May of this year, a whole bunch of stuff got paused even longer than it normally gets. Even the normal wait got even worse, as 5 or 6 projects had to get added to address all the issues there. So anyway, I feel like we have a project management office and we have some pieces there. I think prioritization is not our strong suit. So I look forward to learning from others. Yeah. So, and we
I think
Oh, sorry.
prioritization is just so key here, and maybe that's something that dovetails off of this, but it's not an easy thing, Yvonne. I think even if you have it built into your process and say an organization is maybe a bit up more mature, and I don't think we are that much more different than you. It's very tricky of stakeholders and emotions sometimes and all that, and you really got to put some objectivity into it.
It's tricky. And I did put in the chat that I empathize with Scott that, you know, you even if you do have really rigorous processes in place, there's the political advocacy of certain department members that have strong sway. They like went to a conference and saw something shiny and sexy and want that thing.
Right.
You know, and they're convincing.
The other piece of
Yes.
it is the one I find even more difficult is when you have too many to do at one time. In other words, everybody brings one forward and it's actually legit, and you just don't have the bandwidth to do it. So how do you pick? And that one is really, honestly, that's where it comes down. That's where you're strategic. Because Yvonne, you said something that I think is really important as well. A lot of times when it gets to that strategic leader level, like the director or whatever level, in the course of things that they think about every day, this is 1/1,000,000th of it, right? So that's where that formal recommendation, I think, from the committee makes that where the work really happens, who actually really does the evaluation. That's where you gain a lot more credit, because otherwise it's just a rubber stamp. And then it's like you said, you create a situation where you have a million things to do and, you know, two people to do it, you know. And one of the roles I play is I do a lot of limiting. I'm sort of like, I say, okay, like we can do like 5 or 6 projects this year. Well, because I've never seen an organization be able to do more than 5 or 6 strategic level projects, period. And so again, it's just building those filters, to Mike's point about how do you prioritize. You kind of have to start with a series of filters and say, this is the absolute maximum, and then all the work kind of operates in a context versus, yeah, everybody needs, you know, it's typically not a budgetary limitation, it's a bandwidth limitation. And
right, the participant, like Ting was saying, the participation of the operating groups.
Yeah,
and they're that's one of the biggest limiters if you want them to be on board when you finish it.
and that's why I make them fill out the BCE, because if they're not going to do the work on the front end, then guess what they're going to do the minute it doesn't work on the back end? Whine. So save it. Hey, one other quick question, Ting. I was going to ask you, how do you handle? And I don't. You may have thought through all this, and you may not. So I'm not going to hold you to this. I'm just kind of interested, like, at these, oftentimes, I guess for us at least, these more strategic level, aspirational level things they're sort of multi-year, many of them are multi-year engagements, right? Mm-hmm. Incredibly complex beyond the surface. So like, how do you rate those relative to something that is also a big lift, right? But it's not that level in this framework.
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. Some of the work we are doing is developing a roadmap. So, for instance, is for the network, the GIS network migration and things. That's we have that as a 2 to 3 years of a initiative, and that's a roadmap we're developing. And then we work with the department who's using GIS and have the GIS resource together to develop the roadmap. So then we're break that down into, you know, the yearly or quarterly, and then that's going to be part of this. And then, so once everyone get consensus, so this is already great. So we set aside, you know, 40 hours or 60 hours a quarter on that already. So the capacity is going to change each quarter. And then I have my IT managers doing a capacity planning for each quarter as well on some of the IT project or things that we have to do. Some of the business type of work, if it's related to compliance, if related to safety, we need to build something, so we'll do that. So those are non-discretionary things, and plus the long-term work we're building some time, and that's already part of a capacity we have.
Okay. So like in the utility network upgrade, I'm sorry, I know there's a couple claims. I just want to follow up with one question. So like the utility network upgrade, you've got, I don't know, you got the geometry corrections that need to be done as part of that so that you can build out your data set so you can upgrade to ArcGIS Pro, right? This is just a simple example. You would build, that would be a project sort of in the context of this workflow, and it would sort of walk through the process, or is that sort of different?
It's kind of that one is right in the line. So that one is going to do, we need to do that anyway, because otherwise we won't, right. There's a supporter thing. So I don't see that one is going to be part of this project. So we want people to know, partly we have a lot of time to do these things, but that's not going to be required for sequencing. That's my plan.
Okay. Go ahead, Yvonne.
Oh, one thing I was going to mention that there's been, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but one thing that there's been a little more of when our project management office first started, kind of each idea that came in was sort of had the same level of project management, but yet the scope of the projects were very, very different. So there has been a little bit of movement towards, so for example, with GIS and with kind of workflow automation, those two are now set up as programs. And underneath of that are not full-fledged projects, but there are needs that come in that are more like tasks, I would say. And that prioritization happens between basically the business owner helps to establish the priorities within those tasks that come in. And I think we could probably do a lot more of that because a lot of times the tasks have a lot of similarities that you can leverage, project plans, and sort of there's things that can be a little bit copy paste. That doesn't apply for, of course, like new enterprise-wide ERP systems or something like that. But there are some types of work that are somewhat repeatable. And I would love to do that with our data projects. We're not there yet. Unfortunately, they still come in as like unique things. And then I end up kind of like fighting with the PMO office to say like, well, can you please involve me? And it drives me bonkers. I'd love to just say, have a data program, and we kind of we're able to leverage some of the work we've already done in previous data projects by applying that. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there. I don't know if that's useful or not.
That's a great comment. Yeah, we should capture that as a part of maybe trying to find the word, but best practices were things that we can optimize where.
Yeah, it's like part of the evaluation process, I think, Ting, right? For each individual project. Hey, do we have something going on somewhere else, another request that's similar that requires a sort of a similar level of tech uplift, or however you want to call it.
Yeah.
I was wondering and I know we're getting towards the end of it seems like your focus, it just comes across as your focus is, we want to create a process where we're emphasizing getting projects in the queue and being able to deal with them, proactively, and have a process to do that. But it's almost like at the beginning level of maturity in terms of, of this process. And I was just wondering if maybe if you said, and sounds appropriate, but a year or two down the line, maybe this process would look a little differently. Once you've kind of ripened that process, you have more projects in the queue, and that you're better able to balance your supply and demand of resources, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a great one, Scott. And I also plan to reevaluate this in 6 months, and then we'll we'll look with the committee, see what works, and there might be some adjustment as well. But ultimately, this will inform budgeting process. But I also want to just also add on another one. So as all of this, hopefully we'll get there in a couple of years. But with the new change, there is a change management tool. You know, we're talking about this. So that's probably going to be another fun conversation in next meeting. We're following conversations there.
Hey, Ting, I was gonna say you could just draw, I don't know if Dr. Mike can draw a circle around the whole thing and just say change management, because
Yeah.
that's pretty much the whole thing.
Yeah, to everybody, this is the change. So.
Which Mike?
The business process management.
I didn't know who you were directing that at, but okay,
Yes.
it's a good idea.
I've got to step away. This is great. And Cello, did we record this? You're on mute.
Yeah, he did.
He did. Awesome.
I'm sorry. Yes, I am recording it. Yeah,
Good.
I'm recording it. Yes, and it'll be posted, and I'll send an email to everybody letting them know that you know where the stuff is, and so.
There's a lot. This diagram's a lot busier than when we started the meeting. I hope that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, we'll drill down to the sub processes later too.
Real quick, I got to go too, but I don't know if I can't read it because it's getting small. But if the project is not approved, maybe there's a disposition where it might be reconsidered in the near term, might be considered in the longer term, or might not be considered as is. You know, so there's a parking lot, in other words.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
I got to go, but thanks everybody.
Yeah, let me just stop the recording just a second. And this is exactly